Okay, welcome everyone. Really good to have you on board for today's workshop, which is all about business ideation, how to find your big idea, an idea that you're passionate about that aligns with your company's strategic interests. The objectives for today is, first of all, I just want to take a minute to kind of give a plug for entrepreneurship and help you get vision for entrepreneurship. One of the things I've learned as I've been working with a lot of different people is sometimes they engage this program without really understanding how impactful this can be, both for your organization and for your own career. So I just want to take a minute to remind us all of that. Secondly, we are going to learn about business opportunity search zones. This is a framework for thinking about where to look for business opportunities that I hope you will find valuable. And then we're going to go through a process for rapidly generating the kernel of a business idea, or business idea kernels. Okay, so let's begin with just getting a little vision for entrepreneurship. I think everybody by this point understands what an entrepreneur is, that it's an employee of an established organization who is looking beyond the constraints of just their standard job description to look for opportunities to make a difference, opportunities to create value, certainly for their customers and for the company that they work within, but also value for themselves. And I just want to touch on some examples of what that looks like. And first of all, I would just share that my career as an innovator, as an entrepreneur, began as an entrepreneur. I kind of very early in my career, like my first real job in corporate America, I was working as a technical proposal writer for a engineering services firm. It was pretty humble work. You know, I worked in the business development group, but I wasn't one of the people who got a big paycheck. I had a family of 2 young children, and I was making about $45,000 a year living in Northern Virginia, which was kind of, just barely getting by in our little garden apartment, driving the old minivan. And that was kind of what life looked like for me when I was about 32 years old. And thanks to entrepreneurship, I was able, over a period of approximately 2 years, to more than double my salary to get into, a solid six-figure salary, and also significantly elevate my organizational status and just kind of the sense of impact and, being a player within my organization. And then eventually that success led to my being able to launch the first of what became 3 companies after that as a serial entrepreneur. And my ability to do that was partly a function of all that I had learned and maybe the confidence that I had developed, but it also was a function of the resources that I had developed. I had savings after that I had not had before, to just take on that first venture outside the company. So when we talk about entrepreneurship, I just want to remind everybody that this is a big opportunity. This is an opportunity for doing something that is life-changing for your organization, but also for you. So, it's going to take some work. It's going to take some digging in and really, wrapping your head around a lot of things that you never knew before. But if you're willing to do that, the LaunchPath program and your company, a company that has kind of bought into this overall idea, is there to give you a lot of guidance and support and the chance to succeed in a whole new way. So I just kind of want to remind everybody of that. Just real quickly, how you get there from here as an entrepreneur is progressing through these 6 basic steps of the innovation process. You need to find a good idea. You need to make sure that idea is aligned with both the goals and the resources of your company. So we call that get management buy-in. You need to test the market to see if your basic assumptions about who your target customer is and what the problem is are correct. You need to then see if your idea of how to solve their problem, what we call your model, your solution, how you're going to price it, how you're going to distribute it, how it's competitively differentiated. You need to make sure that that model, kind of meets your market's expectations at a conceptual level, kind of, with a low resolution prototype or with just something on paper doesn't make sense to your customer. Then you need to test out the reality of that by building what we call a minimum viable product and, putting something that the customer can actually use, purchase in their hands, and kind of seeing if the reality of using your solution matches up with the expectations. And then finally, you have to test the mojo. You have to make sure that you can go beyond just a small, limited trial with delivering your product to scaling it up. Can you go from a handful of customers to many customers? Can you go from one deliverable to many deliverables and still, kind of keep the wheels rolling and the profits coming in? Okay, so anyway, I'll skip through all of this. This is kind of just the detailed version of everything I was saying there. But that's your basic journey. So again, just want to remind you that entrepreneurship is a huge opportunity, both for the organization and for the individual. This is the path that you're on when you're trying to get there. Coming up with an idea, which starts out as just a bundle of assumptions about who your customer is, what they're trying to do, what their problem is, how you might solve that, etc., how it's all going to make money, etc., and turning that into a validated reality. Okay, so that's the journey that we're on, and today we're going to be talking about step one of this larger process. How do we find a good idea? All right, so some context for how do we find a good idea is to begin with learning about these 4 business opportunity search zones, and just kind of get a little peek into the background thinking that goes into this process that I'm going to be sharing with you. Is I believe that when it comes to being creative, one of the ways that we can empower that creativity is if we just give our brains something really specific to think about. If I tell you to come up with a new business idea, and that's all that I tell you, I think that most people kind of just start to spin. They have no focal point for their creativity, no focal point for their ideation, and so they don't really get any traction or go anywhere. So if you can give your brain sort of a mental hook to hang an idea on or to get traction on, then the whole process starts to move forward. Basically, what you're going to see as we go through this is that there are, a couple of frameworks that we're going to use to take this big problem of, come up with a cool new business idea and break it down into much smaller problems. And the first of those is finding a zone within which to look for your ideas. And I kind of think of this like, if we were gold prospectors back in the California gold rush and, we're in Baltimore or somewhere getting ready to head out to search for gold, we might pull out a map and just pick an area that we were going to search for gold in. And it's kind of like that with these business opportunity search zones. It's just, how do we go from the whole state of California to one, little tract of land where we are going to dig for gold. So let's look at this. All right. So the first part of this idea is just recognizing that every organization exists at the intersection of one or more particular value propositions and one or more particular customer segments. Okay. So your current business sits right here, and I know that we've got people from some different organizations participating today. So I'll kind of make up one that probably doesn't apply to any of you. But let's say that I'm McDonald's. My customer segment is certainly consumers rather than businesses. And it's probably a certain demographic of consumers that I serve. And, one value proposition that I have is maybe that I offer, affordable, convenient, tasty food. Okay, there might be another value proposition that I offer, which is that I offer a place for you to meet up with your friends and, you know, kind of have an outing with a family member or something like that. You might separate those as two different value propositions, but at that intersection of a, you know, fast, affordable, tasty meal for, you know, consumers, maybe in a particular demographic category, that's where McDonald's currently sits. And when you place your existing organization, you know, when you position it and kind of find where it is on the map, it then suggests 4 possible places to search for new opportunities outside of that. Okay, so so the first is we can kind of go, you know, branch out to a new value proposition for an existing customer. All right, so here was our current value proposition. As we move, you know, cross the borderline from our existing value proposition to a new one, that's zone 1. And the thing that I would just kind of say about zone 1 is that customers can be both internal and external. I mean, sometimes as an entrepreneur, your best opportunity is, you know, doing something for solving one of the problems of one of your top executives. They have a big budget. Maybe you can help them do something more successfully, and that's where your opportunity is. So zone 1, we might say is new value propositions for existing internal customers, and zone 2 we'll call new value propositions for existing external customers. And again, if anybody has any questions at any point, just jump in. All right, so don't hesitate to ask a question if you've got one. You may need to unmute yourself, and also notice that there's the chat ability on the little Zoom control. So feel free to submit your questions via chat if you wish. All right, so this is the first of the 2 business opportunity search zones. All right, and let's just look at an example of that. So for zone 1, a new value proposition for an internal customer, an example that I'm kind of fond of is this thing that Walmart did where they introduced a whole new way of kind of managing the logistics for their products. So back in the old days, you know, the way that sort of all the logistical flow for Walmart would work is a truck from a supplier would come to their distribution center, to their warehouse, and, you know, all of the material would be taken off the truck and loaded into the warehouse. Then a truck going to an individual store would come to the warehouse, and the materials would be unloaded to that and off to the store it would go. You know, so this might be a truck full of basketballs, and this is a truck with, you know, a few basketballs, but a lot of other stuff going to a particular store. And that's kind of how it worked. So Walmart introduced this new technique called cross-docking, where when a truck would come in from the suppliers, so the truck full of basketballs, rather than unloading all of the basketballs in the warehouse and then loading them into the truck, they would just load them directly into the truck. So maybe there are 50 trucks here that all need basketballs, and they just put the 100 basketballs in each one, and it's ready to go. Right. Well, that was a huge innovation for Walmart. You know, that was worth hundreds of millions of dollars of profit for them to do that. So that's kind of a zone 1 example. Zone 2 example, let's take a look at Nike. You know, Nike's original product, if we were having to say what was the original value proposition, the original customer segment, well, that was a high quality athletic shoe for runners. All right. So kind of working off of that customer segment of runners, Nike introduced a new value proposition, which was running shorts and other running apparel. Okay. And that's kind of a zone 2 example. All right. So now for zone 3, what we're looking at here is we've got the same value proposition, but a new customer segment. So a new customer for an existing value proposition. We'll look at Nike again as an example of that. So here they had the high quality athletic shoe that was originally for runners. Well, they started offering high quality athletic shoes for, in this case, golf, but other sports as well, you know, football, baseball, etc. All right. So that's kind of a classic zone 3 example. And then zone 4 is a new value proposition for an entirely new customer. And an example of that is this mineral, which is called corundum, and the 3M, which we know for tape and sticky notes and all sorts of other things. Originally, that was it was a mining company. The third M of 3M stands for, well, the second is mining and the last one is minerals. But they were formed to mine this mineral corundum. The place that they bought the mineral rights for turned out not to have as much corundum as they expected. So they had a big mountain full of sand that they had dug up trying to dig for this corundum. And since that's what they had to work with, this was their first product was corundum. Their second product was industrial sandpaper. It was kind of one of the best examples you could ever think of making lemonade from lemons, but that put 3M on the path to being one of the most innovative companies in the world, is just kind of realizing, okay, we can do something different. So that's a zone 4 example. Totally new value proposition for a totally new customer. Okay, so kind of fill those in. That's what our total opportunity map looks like. And I'll just say in a minute, we're going to look at the ideation process, and it's going to begin by just picking one of these zones. All right, and you might start thinking in advance, where would I like to stake my claim to go searching for my big idea that's going to make me into a successful entrepreneur? And as you do that, one thing that I would highlight is just there are different risk profiles with each of these different zones. So, when you're working in zone 1, doing something internal to help an internal customer, that's probably the least risky opportunity for innovation, mostly because you have easy access to your customer. Maybe it's your own boss. The problems are well understood. It's just kind of the information flow is such that it's a lot easier to get it right. And as you're going to existing customers, that again kind of has some similar characteristics. I think it gets a little harder, even if you've got a well-proven value proposition. Taking it to a different market is probably a little bit riskier than trying to take a new value proposition to an existing customer. And then the zone 4 is definitely the riskiest of all, trying to do something just totally new customer, totally new value proposition. Definitely has a high risk profile. And honestly, if you start searching for examples of established companies that have done this, you'll find that they're pretty few and far between. The ones that are out there are absolutely noteworthy, like 3M, and there are others. Samsung is another, Nokia is another that have been really successful. But I would just kind of highlight that you're likely in most organizations you're going to get some resistance to this unless the company is really starting to struggle in its current markets and with its current customers. So be aware of that. Okay. All right. Okay. So with that background, we're now going to learn a really simple and really effective process for generating a lot of ideas very rapidly, and also ideas that are more likely to be successful. Okay. So I'm going to begin by just, we call this the generating business idea kernel. So let me just quickly, refresh on what I mean by business idea kernel. This is what we mean by business idea. Ultimately, you have to answer all of these questions to have really thought through your whole idea. Who's the customer? What are they trying to do? What problems are they having with what they're trying to do? What's your solution? So forth and so on. What core competencies are going to be required to do this? What resources are going to be required? How is this thing, what kind of money are we going to make and spend, and ultimately what kind of profit are we going to get? So those are different. That's kind of the full idea. But the first 4 boxes of this: who is your customer? What is your customer's job to be done? What is it that they're really trying to do? What problem are they having with that job? And then what is your proposed solution? Those 4 are kind of the essential questions that you need to answer to just even say I've documented an idea. And we call that a business idea kernel. Okay, and you'll notice when you are documenting an idea in LaunchPath, when you click that new idea button, you're asked to answer those first 4 questions. Who is your target customer? What's your customer trying to do? And so forth. Okay, so that's your business idea kernel. And so what we're going to be learning is not the process for fleshing out all those other things, but just capturing the kernel of your idea. And I want to say before I go any further that what I would recommend to everyone, if we kind of just think about where we are, there's a big opportunity for you to be an entrepreneur. To do that, you're going to have to go through this journey of finding your good idea, selling management on it, testing the market, and so forth. Well, what I recommend is don't come up with one idea and pitch that immediately to management. Challenge yourself to come up with a lot of ideas. It's just kind of a general principle of good ideation is that, there's a saying that the best way to find a good idea is to generate a lot of ideas. So I would challenge you to come up with 20 ideas, all right? Before you even submit your first one. Come up with 20 ideas, evaluate each one of those, and see if you've got one that's a real winner. And so I'm going to show you how to do that so that coming up with 20 ideas is actually a task that you could do and do it pretty quickly, all right? So we'll walk through kind of a high-level process, then we'll dig into it with an example. So summary of this process is step 1, you're going to select one of those business opportunity search zones. So new value proposition for an internal customer, new value proposition for an existing external customer, and so forth. Select a search zone. Once you do that, you are then going to identify a target customer by just kind of brainstorming who are the customers within that search zone. And you're going to pick one of those, all right? Then you're going to take that, kind of zoom in on that particular customer, and you're going to brainstorm a lot of ideas about what is their job to be done, all right? Then you're going to pick one of those jobs to be done. Then you're going to brainstorm what are the problems that they're having with those jobs, all right? And then you're going to pick one, or maybe there's a cluster of those problems that all kind of go together. And then finally, you're going to brainstorm a lot of solutions to that particular problem. And then when you're done with that, notice that you will be able to document your business idea kernel. You'll have a customer, their job to be done, their problem, and your solution, okay? Throughout this, just kind of, again, I've said this already, but remember that challenging yourself to generate lots of ideas, just brainstorming lots of ideas at each step as you go is part of the process. So when I'm going to pick a single search zone, but then within that, I'm going to try to challenge myself to come up with 20 different customers that are within that search zone, for example. And then when I pick one of those customers and I'm trying to think about their job to be done, I'm going to generate a lot of different jobs to be done, and so forth. Okay, so at each stage, you're trying to challenge yourself to come up with lots of ideas and then just selecting one and putting it together. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you an example. Some of you have seen this many times before. I use a car dealership just because it's something that's familiar for everyone. And so we'll walk through it. I want you to just kind of imagine that those of us who are participating in this workshop all work for the local car dealership, and we want to come up with a big idea. We want to be intrapreneurs. How would we do that? All right. So what we're going to do is literally pull out a sheet of paper, and I want to encourage those of you who are, who are participating to just right now, pull out a piece of paper and kind of follow along as we do this. So you're going to pull out a piece of paper, and you're going to write at the top of it. And I would encourage you to do this right now. Just take your sheet of paper and just write idea number 1. Remember, we're going to come up with 20. We're not going to come up with 20 today, but if you were, when this workshop is over, I encourage you to just go look at your calendar and find a 1-hour time slot, maybe a 90-minute time slot, and set it aside for your time to brainstorm ideas. And when you do that, bring a stack of paper, and at the top of your first sheet of paper, you're going to write idea number 1. And when you're done with that hour, I think you can easily have 5 to 10 new ideas in an hour. All right, so just write idea number 1. Then you're going to select a search zone. So remember that these are our 4 zones, and I would encourage you now, if you're following along with this, just to pick one of those. And for those of you who've done this before, pick something different this time. Let's challenge your creativity to go in a different direction. Sometimes people wonder, is there any special strategy about how I pick my search zone? And I would say, other than being sensitive to the risk profile of each of these search zones, I would just go with my gut, just randomly pick one. Okay, so for example, in this case, we're going to pick zone 2, a new value proposition for an existing customer. All right, and so now what I want you to do on your sheet of paper is you've got idea number 1 at the top, and now just kind of put this subheading under your idea. This is a new solution for a current customer. All right, and that's kind of how you'll know what zone you selected for this idea. Now we're going to identify a customer. In order to do this, I want you to pull out a separate sheet of paper, just kind of a scratch pad. And what we're going to do is just brainstorm all of the customers we can think of that are, that kind of fit our search zone. So who are the current customers of a car dealership? When I did this brainstorming, this is what I came up with. And this is, I literally went through exactly the process that I'm describing to you now. And as I thought about it, I thought, well, at the car dealership, we've got consumers, but then we have commercial customers. And for the consumers, some of those are buying a new car, some are buying a used car, some are there for service and repair. Okay, and then we've got commercial customers like government agencies, anybody that owns a fleet of vehicles and so forth. All right. So do this now. Just kind of see if you can throw down 3 bullet points about who customers are within your search zone. And then again, just pick one. You don't have to think too much about it. Just pick one out. And then I want you to draw a little, you might take this section of your paper and divide it into quadrants. So you've got, a box here, a box here, a box here, and a box there. And fill in this first box, label it customer, and then put the name of your customer right there. Okay? Next, we're going to identify the customer's job, their job to be done. So pull out a new sheet of paper here, and here are the jobs that I brainstormed for my customer, which I had kind of refined this a little bit to focus on luxury car service and repair clients. So things I identified for them is, service and repair. So they have maintenance. One of the things that I have to do, when it comes to maintenance is just monitor my maintenance needs. If I'm the customer, I have to know when I have to get maintenance done. Then the maintenance stuff that I need done is sometimes it's kind of the small stuff like an oil change, tire rotation. Sometimes it's a major milestone maintenance thing where I need to get the timing belts done and all that. Sometimes it's a manufacturer recall. And then I've got repairs. I accidentally bumped into something. All right. So of all of those, again, just pick one of the jobs to be done that appeals to you. And now you're going to put that on your sheet of paper right here. So we've got a customer, we've got their job to be done. And so next, we're going to identify the customer's problem. All right. So we're going to pull out a new sheet of paper. And we're going to brainstorm what are all the problems that people might have with routine minor car maintenance. Okay, and here are the ones that I came up with in my little brainstorming thing, just kind of thinking about my own challenges. It's a hassle to get the scheduling done. They're often not available at a time that's convenient for me. Takes hours out of the busy weekend. I don't get around to it because of those first 2 problems, which can lead to higher repair costs, safety risks. And then when you get there, oftentimes the car dealership is in an unattractive part of town. There's nothing within walking distance and so forth, right? So those are some of the problems. So of those, I took a block of those that I felt like kind of went together and identified those as my problem. So that's what you would do here. It's going to fill in the 3rd box of your idea with the problem. And then you're going to identify a solution. I want to just pause and say that normally if we had begun this whole thing and said, okay, everybody, we're going to just stop and brainstorm ideas, the thing that you would have thought that you had to do is just start thinking up solutions, features to a particular product or to a particular service. That would be very hard. But if you notice that after we've kind of walked our way down to, picking a particular customer, picking a particular thing that is important to that customer, identifying the particular problems, what you'll find is that it's just kind of easy to start thinking of solutions. And so if you pull out a piece of paper and start brainstorming those now, here are some of the ones that came to them. Now, I want to pause for a second and just highlight something that you will find that you can come up with solutions, but there's sort of a pro tip about coming up with your solutions, which is to do that informed by key trends that are going on in the world. Okay, technology trends, demographic trends, so forth. And I just want to highlight that there's another workshop. It'll probably be not next week, but the week after that, where we will talk about how to identify those trends, how to monitor those trends. So look for that workshop, because that will kind of power up your ability to think about solutions, and really some of these other things as well. Power up your ability to brainstorm customers and jobs to be done and problems that they're having. So look for that workshop in the future. It's a really good one, a kind of a technique for how to stay on top of those trends. Okay. All right. So in this case, these are the solutions I came up with, and I think actually the one that I went with was offering a mobile maintenance service. I think my animation is a little off there. So we come to you mobile maintenance. That was the idea that I came up with when I just went through this process, imagining myself working for a car dealership. Okay. So basically, you're going to do that and repeat this process until you've generated a lot of ideas. I mean, 20, 30, 40. If that's feeling like too much, just do more than one or two. Shoot for 5 or 10 at least. Okay. One little thing I would just highlight is that if you're going along through this and you find that you get stuck, let's say that I had gotten to here and just, dang it, I actually was not successful in coming up with any solutions that sounded interesting. Well, just back up to the next step and try again. Pick a different problem and see what happens there. So you can kind of imagine that, what if rather than picking this problem, I had picked there's nothing to do while waiting for maintenance to be done. Then, when I pulled out my brainstorming sheet, that might kind of unlock my mind to come up with something good. Okay, so yeah, just back it up. If that was unsuccessful, back up, change the job, and then re-brainstorm the problems, and then try again with the solutions. All right. So that process, I promise you that you will find traction and you'll get your creativity going if you give that a try. Okay. So it's 12:34. What I'd like you to do, if you haven't already, is first of all, let's give everybody an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. And then I want to just kind of reserve the remaining time for you to actually work on generating ideas. And I will stay on board here. And you may come up with something that you'd be willing to share. You may not. But if you were willing, I would love to hear what people actually come up with in terms of their ideas. So let me take a chance for any questions that anyone has. Feel free to submit those through the chat box or just speak up. Any questions?
Hey, great. This is Alan.
Yeah.
So it seems like this ideation process, what's so good about it is that you're not really trying to create something in your mind that's completely new that you never thought of before necessarily. Yeah. It seems more like you're building on associations. Yeah. So you start from where you are, and then the method that you're describing, you're just extending your thinking to the thing that's right next to that idea, or it's expanding outward step by step, rather than trying to create something that's radically new
Yeah,
that nobody ever thought of before. Now you might end up there
that's
even
right. Yeah,
after many iterations, but it's that, I think they call it the adjacent possible, right?
right. Yeah, yeah. That's a great expression, and that's right. Alan is just trying to give your mind a series. You're coming up with that big idea can feel like someone's asking you to leap on top of a 3-story building.
Right,
This
right.
is the staircase to get you there.
Hmm.
What you get to at the end could be a really big, exciting idea, but you took it one step at a time as opposed to just trying to, drink an extra cup of coffee and be brilliant for 5 minutes. So, yeah,
I mean, so this is very helpful because I think that we oftentimes have these challenges in a group setting,
yeah,
and then you go to a brainstorming session or whatever you want to call it, and
right,
people are just trying, just okay, let's come up with ideas.
right, yeah,
And so people get stuck, or you keep regurgitating the same ideas over and over again,
right,
um, and you end up not getting to a point to anything that's truly innovative, right? But this is sort of a much easier process because your brain can work on what do we know, like what are you familiar with right now, and then you
right.
build on that by going to thinking about not the big leap, but about just the incremental leap next to each idea or each thought, and you just keep building it out. But eventually, you may end up with something that's really significantly different, right? But
Yeah.
it's step-by-step association, it seems.
Yeah. That's right. And the thing that I was mentioning about the upcoming workshop on trends
Mm.
can really help open up new avenues. So when we do that workshop about trends, what that might lead to is when you're brainstorming your target customer,
Mm-hmm.
once you have become more aware of the macro trends and micro trends that are kind of swirling around your industry, you might see when you brainstorm your list of customers, you might think of customers that you had never thought of before. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I'll give an example. A big trend is the rising middle class in developing nations. Countries like China and India and so forth are seeing massive amounts of people come into the middle class, buying their first car, buying their first appliance, and so forth. And if you had kind of learned this process and also just become a person who is more aware of trends and how to monitor and kind of keep feeding your mind on those emerging trends, then when you were brainstorming your list of target customers, you might see that opportunity that you hadn't seen before. When it came to identifying your solution, if you have developed both kind of the habit and the techniques and sort of a framework for staying abreast of emerging technology, trends, you might have ideas about new solutions that you hadn't thought about before. So I think this method pairs really well with kind of the discipline and the method of spotting the trends and monitoring the trends. So I would really encourage everybody to look for that workshop. It's not been scheduled yet, but the next workshop up is kind of digging a little bit deeper into how do I evaluate my idea after I come up with it. But then the one after that is going to look at trends. So this one, the next one, and then the one after that all kind of make a nice, they make a nice group to participate in together. Appreciate the comment, Alan. You're totally understanding what we're doing here. Anybody else have any questions or comments? All right. Well, listen, I'm going to be sitting right here. We've got 20 minutes till the hour is up. I want to challenge you to right now pull out a few sheets of paper and bang out one new idea. Don't go back to work until you've got one. Don't worry about if it's a good one or not, but just be able to go home tonight and say, honey, I came up with a new business idea. So you can definitely do that in the next 20 minutes. And in about 15 minutes, I will check in and see if anybody has anything they would like to share. Okay, well, we have about 8 minutes till the top of the hour. I wanted to just give everyone an opportunity to see if they had any questions now that they had engaged the process. And if I have any brave souls who are willing to share your idea, I'd love to hear that as well. Everybody's muted. I don't know if you're trying to share your exciting big idea and just got a technical difficulty. Alan, you got something?
No, I mean, I don't have any idea. The only idea I have right now is that I'm actually, this is an actual idea I'm thinking about, is the customer would be internal key individuals or managers.
Mm-hmm.
The customer's problem is performance, improving performance,
Mm-hmm.
or the hold on, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the customer, right? Internal. The customer's job is performance. The problem is how to improve performance, which is a difficult thing. And my solution is coaching, improved coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And to offer that as an internal service to the management team.
Great.
And but think of it as like a target as customers and a market rather than just a management activity that we need to do.
Yeah.
There's so many, in the solution, there's so many aspects to that because none of us really get effective training in coaching currently. And I've been doing some research into it. And as a product, or being able to deliver a solution for that problem, I'm finding that there's a lot more you need to know. There's a lot of training we could actually do, a lot of learning we could actually do to implement a more effective coaching program, and that is teachable to other managers, right?
Yeah.
And I think that if we can improve the performance of the individual, then we can improve the company's performance overall.
I love it. That's great. Well, you did come up with an idea. What are you talking about? You said you didn't have one. You totally got one. That's great.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Anybody else have anything you want to share or any questions before we wrap it up for today? Okay. Let me point out, I don't know if you're still looking at my screen, but while during that silent moment, I texted my technical partner, Manny, and asked him to go ahead and activate this trend spotting workshop. So if you'll notice if you go into the tool, if you go to workshops, we've just completed the business ideation. This next one, what makes a good idea good, is taking the ideas that you generate and digging a little deeper into what are all the other components of the idea. So beyond the kernel, what are those other components, and then how do I evaluate that idea to know whether it's one that's worth going for? And then this trend spotting is the one that I've kind of been promoting throughout this workshop. So all of those are available. If you go there right now, you can go ahead and register and get those on your calendar. So I encourage you to do that. It's been great being with you all. Thanks for being such wonderful participants in today's workshop, and good luck innovating. I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Take care.